Hi, it's Commodore Sam coming to you again from LA, Lower Alabama. Just wanted to bring you the very next episode in our Prog8 series. This time we've got Brett Estrade demonstrating his coding of a VI clone for the Commander X16 and OtterX series. So let's get right to it.
Okay, my name is Brett and Estrade, and I'm part of the Retro Door group here with Sam and Andrew. And I guess I've been hinting at a rewrite to the VI port that I had written initially, which was really just more of a proof of concept or a demo. But here I'm going to show off some progress and talk a little bit about how I've gotten Prog8 to bend at my whim to some degree. And so what we see here is just the emulator that has the initial startup screen, and it's kind of purposefully styled as Vim. If you were just to start up Vim without the without any files. But what I can show now is I've got support where I can open up a file. So a critical thing here is going to be supporting the VI, the controls, the navigation. And so I can hit escape and colon, and then E is just for edit. And then I've got a file in the local directory here called sample.txt. Okay, and this is a 175 line text file, and it's just the lorem ipsum Latin text. But what I've got so far is it'll open up a file. This one's 175 lines. I was trying to find out kind of the upper limit of the lines that it would support. But last night I had like a 250 line file, and it was either taking a very long time to load or it was just stalling on the load. And so I need to kind of track that down. But 175 lines is a reasonably long file that I can open up reliably. And so you can see the cursor hopefully here. It's just over each letter, and it does the inversion of a letter. And I'll talk a little bit about how I accomplish that. And at the very bottom, this is a status line. So the first number, 00175, that's just the number of lines that are read in. The X is the the column that it's in, and then Y is the row that it's in, and then max lines. This actually indicates like what is the maximum line number of the file that's being displayed, and that's more of a debugging output. And so what I have so far is I can actually like page down through the whole file. And this was something this is actually the second version of version 2 that I wrote. And once Prog8, the compiler, started supporting structs, I thought that would probably be a good way to organize my code, because I'd gotten pretty much to this point with the original code, but I wasn't using structs. And then when I started wanting to do things like the delete lines and cut, copy, and paste lines, the yank and paste lines for the VI support, then I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to do it, because I was pretty much had hacked myself to this point using the original version 2. One thing I don't have here that I did implement in the first implementation of version 2 was the ability to jump to the end of the line or end of the document or to the first part of the document. So I'm taking some time here to kind of scroll all the way down. You can see max line at the very bottom of the emulator where it says max line. That is displaying the line number that is at the very bottom at any given point. So I'm just trying to get up to 175 just to show you that it'll do the right thing and stop. Although you can see if I hit the down button or the J for down, you can see that line that kind of goes down. It is redrawing that screen. So every time I cross, I either go down outside of to the next line, or I go up to the previous line that's not in view. It's going to do a redraw, which I need to stop. I need to prevent that from happening. I wish I could just jump to the top, but just to show you that I can also just hit K, which is the up. And then of course L is moving my cursor to the right, and then H is moving it to the left. It does have a hard stop there at column 3. I have not re-implemented line numbers. I had that also working, but it wasn't very good. It didn't support it was enough space for 2 numbers, but not 3, and I wanted to support over 99 lines. And this guy on the right hand side will stop there. So I don't have intentions to handle line wraps, and I think the initial release of 2.0 is going to have a fixed line length of like say 80 columns or something like that. But hopefully I'll get some enough complaints to where I'm motivated to investigate line wrapping and all of that, or at least support things going off the screen. What I can do here is just hit escape colon and then Q, and that'll quit to the ready prompts. And then a nice little shortcut that I found works to close this window, the emulator out, is Alt F4. So my kind of workflow here is to run a makefile. I'll see what changes. Hopefully it'll compile, and then, well, not this time, I know it will, but if my development workflow is load it up and then open up a file. I'll open up another file that is some Prog8 source code, sample4.txt. And so this is what source code would look like, or does look like. There's no color coding, but I think at some point maybe I can figure out how to do some basic keyword highlighting or some syntax highlighting. But this is what a Prog8 file looks like in this emulator. In any case, if I wanted to just quit the emulator, because I usually don't do the colon Q to quit, I'll just hit Alt F4, and that puts me right back in my console. So it's nice little workflow efficiency. What I can do is also talk about my setup, because we've got some really good setups that we've seen from Andrew and Sam. Mine is kind of just like hacked together and thrown together. I do have IntelliJ installed, but I have not actually gone through the steps that they've gone through to make it really nice. But what I have is I use a terminal called MSys2. Let me sys. I'm going to bring over a browser here. Okay, MSys2. Basically, what this is. Okay, MSys2 is it's not just a terminal for Windows. It also includes a bunch of like shared libraries that were built using for the Windows environment. It's more native Windows than like say Cygwin, which I think uses some kind of compatibility layer. But MSys2 is used if you want to compile things as like open source or Linux, things that you're used to running on Linux, as close to possible to native Microsoft binaries as possible. It minimizes some of the abstractions. And so the reason I use it is because it comes with a nice terminal. And so this is the closest I've come to emulating a development environment that I'm used to using on, say, Mac or Linux, which is going to be terminal based. And of course, I use Vim, and then just kind of present the development environment as you would like on a Linux machine or just using terminal. And so I can pull up my Vim editor. This is the source code for the version or the VI that we just showed, but this is the sample text. And then let me open up the sample4.txt. This is the Prog8 source code that I pulled up. I forget what it does. I think this is a sample, one of the sample programs that is on the Prog8 repo on GitHub. But this is my makefile. The fanciest thing about my makefile is that I can specify which version of the compiler I want to use. And currently it's set up to use this 12.0 beta 5. I think, are we up to 12.0.1? I think I need to try that at the next one. But what I found was the reason I'm not using 12.0.0 is because there was a bug or something that my code was exposing, and then I think it was fixed upstream, but I haven't had a chance to try it. But the latest one that did work for me was this beta 5. So, but the fanciest thing I've got about this makefile is that I can specify the Prog8 compiler at the command line. This other stuff is kind of just these different parameters broken out, but I don't really change it when I'm using it. And then the actual targets that I'm using here are XVI2, and it's just going to run the Prog8 compiler, set the target to X16, and then path the source code, and then to run it, I set the emulator path here, and then do -debug -scale 2 brings it up twice as big as it normally would without that. And then the program's going to be this is the program that you run. The --run tells you to run, tells the emulator to run it. And I've been the --gif will actually create an animated GIF of your session that you can then upload, like say to the Discord server or something, to kind of show off some of your progress. And that's how I've been showing Andrew and Sam my progress. Is I'll get it to a good spot, I'll fire it up, show them a few seconds of functionality, and then I'll quit, and then I'll upload that GIF. Okay, so I guess we can start from the top. Oh, let me show you the make command here is down here at the bottom. Oh, I don't have the Prog8. I can set Prog8 like this. What is it? Wait, let's see. Is it jar? Oh yeah, it's jar. So if you can see this command at the very bottom here, it's make, and then this capital, all caps, jar equals Prog8, and this is the path to the jar file, which is the default. So I don't actually use it. And then XVI2, which is the target, the first target I want to run, and then run, which is the second target. So that's what the make command looks like. And then so right now this is the beginning of the file. Okay, so we're starting at the top of the file. That program is just one file right now. I did have it split up into different modules, but I have set it up so that the modules are actually in the same file now. So, okay, first line, we've got 0 page, and I think you guys could probably explain a little better what's going on there with the 0 page. Option no sysinit. I've noticed that if we were to compile without this line, it's the Prog8 runtime, or the compiler, actually introduces a like its own, like the screen is black, I think, for the emulator. It's got a different color scheme. So this is, if you don't have that, this is the color scheme that you get, and there's probably some other stuff that happens. But that's what that line is for, is to just not do that. Encoding. So one of the big with my initial version of XVI, I used it just supported PETC, so you couldn't do any like C-like programming languages with it. You could write BASIC with it, but you couldn't do anything with C, like with the curly braces or any non-PETSCI characters. And then also you were limited, it didn't have any paging, so that was one of the big motivations for me, was to introduce a new version of paging. And then the other thing with the first version was it used like a UI library called VT-UI, which was really good for me to like kind of get started programming on the X16. And somebody had created a like a binding for it so that you could use it in a Prog8 program really easily. And it was just an easy way to create a UI that had like input elements, input form, not input form, but like in a regular form, like say an HTML form, you can like specify like an input line or a block of text or something like that. So in any case, that just made it easy for me to write it, and it was limited. But here I'm doing it without any kind of additional libraries or anything like that. But ISO was also the other thing, is I wanted to support ISO, not instead of PETSI, but I think I've been assuming ISO the whole time for this program. And I think I'll have to make I would like to be able to switch in and out of either ISO or PETSI mode, or I'm not promising like other character sets, but if somebody's interested in like supporting that, I'm happy to kind of learn how to implement that kind of thing. But initially it's just the ISO because it gives us the ability to do, C-like programming languages. It gives us a lot more characters to work from. But then I've just got the set of these standard Prog8 libraries in here that I use for one reason or another. And so after that, this is where I've got like the different, like I'm a Perl programmer, and so I kind of look at these as like package or namespaces, and it's probably similar concept in other languages, but these are kind of like full-fledged named like scopes where you can define variables. There's kind of self-contained. So you can have variables within these large named blocks. You can have subroutines, and then you can call them with the name and then dot something. So like we'll see later on the code that I can refer to mode as, say, mode.nav, and that's going to give me the value that's set here. So this is so I'm using this more as like a way to organize, referring to the different modes that I'm supporting. VI has different modes. And I probably should have mentioned this earlier. Of course, if you're watching this, you may already know what VI is, but VI it supports different modes. It's not like Pico or Nano or Notepad or X16 Edit, where you open it up and you can just start typing, and it's like every time you hit the keys, unless it's like some magic combination, it's going to always like put that text to the screen. The way that VI works is you have a navigation mode where you can use your keyboard to move around, and you can see it right here. I've got this source code file. I'm trying to port the created editor that I'm using to write the actual program. So you would just use the H to go to the left, J is down, K is up, and then L is right. And that gives you a way to move two-dimensionally in the file. Well, in order for me to do that without actually writing things to the screen, I have to be in a navigation mode. And so that's like the default mode for VI and for what I'm implementing that feature or that characteristic. And so that's what this mode, this set of mode constants is tracking. So navigation is the initial mode that I support. I also support command mode. So like if I hit escape :E and then I type in the file names, I've gone from navigation mode, let's say, to command mode, and that's what puts my cursor down at the very bottom of the screen, and it allows me to type it in. So like I can do that here. Usually I'll hit escape, and now I'm in my like real editor here, but the behavior is very similar. Escape and then colon, and you can see at the very bottom you've got that colon and the blinking cursor. And then I can issue a command. I don't know what off the top of my head. I can open up another file, sample4.txt. I already opened up sample4. Well, open it up again. So, but you can see that that's what the command mode does. All right, so that kind of manages the mode state, or the mode that it's in. I've got a full named scope here for view, and that controls the parameters of the screen. So where's my left margin? It's at column 3. My right margin is at column 78. The height, the actual viewing box that I'm allowing for the editor is 56 rows. The top line starts at line 2. And then I've got middle line defined. I haven't really done anything with that. Bottom line I use, footer line I use, blank line I use that basically to clear out If I want to clear out a line, I'll just jump to that line, I'll plot down to that line, and then I'll print the blank line. And it seems pretty like a pretty effective way to get rid of whatever's there. And then current top line, this actually is how I implemented the paging. And this is the second time I've implemented paging because, like I said, this is the rewrite of the version 2. And that, what I kind of came upon this method just by like trial and error, but here it's, in the first version of this version 2, it was really messy, and I kind of like stumbled my way to doing it this way. But this, I just from the beginning started that. And so basically, when I'm navigating down and I say I'm at the bottom, the very bottom line that's visible in the document, but there's more outside off the screen. If I hit J, so J. I want the cursor to stay at that bottom line, but I want the next line to kind of move up. And so the way that I do that is I set current top line to then be 2 or increment it by 1. So each time I hit J, it'll increment by 1, and then I'll run a redraw screen routine where it draws from whichever the top line is of the document. And then I'll draw that line, and then plus like 56 or 55 the next 55 lines, and that gives that the effect where the document is actually like moving up. So this R and C, these are just shortcuts for getting a row and column. Cursor, so this is kind of like a catch-all for doing anything with the cursor itself. This is where I implement the how the cursor behaves. Like if you're moving it down, it defines the inversion. So if you're going over, let's see, I guess here in this the VI that I'm using here on within MSys2 on Windows, it kind of does that thing. I don't have any blinking, but basically it is providing some kind of inverted color scheme. Whenever you can see, whenever you're going over a character, it's going to turn, the character is going to be black, or when it's blinking, it's going to be a white background and a black foreground, and then it goes back to the native thing. So I don't know. I think probably a blinking cursor would be nice. That's nice and easy to see. But the way that I do it here is, if I want to move the cursor somewhere, I use this place subroutine here, and this stuff here, like restore current character, that's all used to replace. So I guess I didn't understand at all how to do this when I programmed the first version. And so it took me a little while to understand the concept of, if you want to give that effect of moving a cursor, basically wherever the cursor is, you need it to have saved like the value of that original character somewhere. And so like and then when you move off of it to like the next line, you need to replace what was there and then save the next one that you jump on, and then implement whatever cursor effect you have there. And so this restore command is actually saying whichever spot, like if I move down here from the R to the W, whichever spot I just moved off on, like the R, I need to make sure that address of the VRAM or whatever is holding the value of that R gets replaced with the right character and the right color. So like the right background and right foreground. And that's what that restore current character is. It means it's like put back right where you just came from. And then the text plot actually moves it down to the next row or wherever, because I'll take the parameter, the new row and column. And then save current character. That's the character that I land on. I want to save it before I do anything with it, like implement any kind of effect that would necessarily is destructive to that address, that memory address. And then I print the character out, which was let's see, save character, and then this is where I print the okay. So I'm printing back out here this is okay. I'm not saying this is the right way to do it. This is what's going on here. So when I land on the, like say the A in my code, I save the A, the original value, and then I print it out again. Probably don't need to do that, but maybe I do. I don't know. I'll test that out later. And then in order to give the inverted color, what I do here is I run this set CLR, and then I specify the row and the column, so the X and Y of what character I want to change. And then this $16, you know what? I don't remember exactly what that's doing, but I remember figuring out that this is how I would do it. And so that's what actually gives me the inversion of the whatever's underneath the cursor. And then plot, this text plot, this, oh, so I think I had to, maybe I don't need to do that. But this just makes sure, this is me making sure that it's like where it's supposed to be, the cursor itself. Because it's supposed to be tracking wherever, I guess internally, the cursor is tracked within the memory. Because I could, like, just because I've got my cursor moving around, that doesn't mean it's going to be, you know, that's actually like where things will start writing to the screen if I were to print something. So I need to make sure that those are the same. This replace function is just like that, except I found that I had to, when the cursor is down at the bottom, I found that I had to do, it was causing artifacts like off to the left, to the bottom left of the screen, which is really weird. I'm not exactly sure why that was happening, but I did figure out that having an alternate replace instead of place eliminated that. So that's one of the final things that I did last night. So it actually looks normal, I guess, when you're navigating the screen. And you saw the intro when I was going up and down the document. The command prompt, this is, so when I first open it up, and after I explain this, I'll start the editor back up again and just kind of show you where I'm talking about with these things. This is what, if I hit escape and then colon, and then I get the cursor will jump down to the bottom to the footer. Okay, and that's what this text plot footer line is. I jump down to the bottom. It prints a blank line, so it blanks out whatever, like that status message that's down there. And then I go back to that, make sure I'm back on that line, and then I print a colon. And that's kind of like my prompt when I want to be able to type the command. And then this is my input loop. And so it was hard for me to even figure out how to do this and get it right. And I don't know how possible it is for me to explain how it's actually working, but basically it allows me to type in a command. So if I do shift or escape and then colon, and then E for edit, it's space, and then type in the name of the file, I'll hit enter. And when I hit enter, which is here. Oh, so okay, so what I've got is a loop. This is a repeat. So command input is a label. And then this go to down here is command input, or goes back to the command input. So basically I got an input loop here. And then here I'm getting the character that may have been typed in. If it is not the enter key, okay, it's going to print it out. And then if it is, this is when I actually do the processing of what is contained in that line, and then I'll strip it down and get out just the relevant command stuff that I want out of it. So all that processing is done right there. One thing I don't really understand how it works is originally when I implemented something, I couldn't hit the backspace and like delete what was before it, but for some reason this one works where I can just type in what I need, and then I hit, maybe because the backspace is getting printed out and printing it out the backspace moves the cursor. Probably that's what happens. And so I'll demonstrate what that whole chunk there does, because that basically handles all of the on-screen navigation stuff. And originally this was actually This was its own separate file, and I included it up at the top as a custom module. Okay, so we'll make it and run it again. And here, oh wait a minute. Oh, I didn't save it from last time. Okay, not that I don't like that color scheme. It would be neat to be able to switch color schemes. You could set it. I would like to be able to do that. Okay, this is the splash screen. So this is meant to emulate, like I said, opening up VI or VM without the without any kind of file specified. And Andrew does have a routine that allows us to implement some kind of, if you were to type in, let me do this. Let me quit. I'll quit here. I need to make that a little more resilient. It should work here. If I quit this out and I get to ready prompt, I want to be able to type in like X, was it run? And then you type in run, because I mean it's already loaded, the program's loaded. I'm not going to load it again, but it would be run, and I want to be able to do
be like run : and then rem,
like this,
and then you could put your command arguments after that.
So like this.
Yeah, and then whatever your argument would be.
So here, so what I'm going to implement this. So I want to be able to run it like that. And I guess if I hit enter right now, it'll run it, but it will just ignore the rem stuff. Okay. And so Andrew has a neat routine with for Prog8 that'll let that part of the screen memory, right, be read, and then from that you can parse out the parameters. So I wanted to show that, but if I hit E, if I hit :E and then I type in sample6.txt, this is this is being facilitated by the command prompt routine that you saw. And I can hit the backspace here, and it's giving me that effect where I can delete characters and move the cursor back. This is the guys again. So I hit, the problem there is I hit escape : and then I hit escape again, or I typed in a character that I don't want to type in. So I have to do this perfectly right now to make sure it works as intended. So I need to build some robustness into this command line thing. But if I run that perfectly, it'll load up this file. And so what I was saying about like the cursor, okay, so the cursor as it's moving down, it starts off on the upper leftmost character. So in here it's the L from lorem. And so what initially happens for the placement of the cursor is that the value of that character, so the L is saved, and then it is printed out, or I make sure the cursor goes right back to that spot. Then I run that, was it set CLR command, and that inverts the color scheme, which gives us the white on or the blue on white rather than the white on blue. And so when I move the cursor down, it replaces where the cursor had been with the normal looking L, and then it does that. It does the copy, print, and then invert thing again for the C. And so I can just do that all day long across the screen here. When I'm going up and down here, the cursor is being replaced, not replaced. The cursor is being managed by that place command, or that place function that I mentioned, or that I showed. And then when I get to the very top here, okay, it's being managed by that replace function. And they both kind of do replacement, but I needed to name them different things. I would like to use the same function for whether it's at the top or the bottom, and within, within the interior of the document. But I just gotta figure out exactly why it was doing that in order to use the same function. But it's working enough now for demonstration purposes. And then I don't have that problem if I hit up against the column, but I'll be showing navigation here in a second. But when you hit the H button, when it runs up to when it's on the fourth column, it won't go any further left. So it's just like a no. And then likewise, if you go all the way over to the right, I guess looking at the code, this is column 78. It won't go past that. So and then yeah, so that's the part I just went over, and the piece of this that governs the cursor placement. And then I'll talk about the navigation. So I have actually I probably should talk about, no, let me talk about the navigation, and then I'll talk about like how I store the document internally and load it and all of that. Because that part is really neat, and is basically made Prog8 even cooler to me now than it was before. So scrolling down, going past, this is inside of the code where I have that screen, that splash screen, the initial screen implemented. And really it's just a splash function. And all I'm doing is clearing the screen, moving the cursor up to the very top, and then emulating, like if you open up Vim without any kind of like, let me show you. If I just were to open up Vim, see, this is what it looks like. So this is the actual like official Vim, but you've got this tilde is all the way on the left, and you've got the name of the program, version, author, and all of that, and some initial things. So that's what I'm emulating. I'm not sure how they emulate it, but this is how I did it inside of the XVI code. And so the start function, this is the start function inside of the main namespace. And this is the initial function that gets called when, it's like the main in C, the main function in C here. Here I set the ISO mode. And in here, I'm setting some, well, above this command, or above this subroutine start, I had initialized within the main namespace a document called doc. And so here I'm just setting some fields in that, like the tab number. I would like to implement tabs, like kind of like I have tabs here. If I can cycle through the tabs, I would really love to do that. And I think that is very possible. So that's kind of just for future proofing. The character set, I'd also like to be able to switch character sets, and that's the track. Start bank, I don't really use that here, but I know at some point I'm going to want to like take up as much memory as possible. And so that's just in there for that. Line count counts the number of lines that have been loaded. First line, this buffer, and this is the first line of the block of memory that's been allocated for the document. And then file path is just the name of the current file. And so what's going on here is when I just start it up, what happens is it runs this start function. It plots the cursor, where to the upper right, and then, or the upper left, and then it runs the splash function that we just saw, which is right here. And that's so like you haven't loaded a file, it doesn't know any kind of file that you want to load or anything like that. So it'll just show that. The stuff that I have commented out, that's just for making development a little more efficient for me. I'll just like automatically load up sample6.txt, and then so it's just going to load up, and so I can just like test whatever I just implemented, or try and do some troubleshooting or whatnot. But that's commented out for now, because the intention is to start it up with the splash screen, or to provide functionality or use Andrew's method to be able to specify a file name at the command line. So that whole stuff's just for development. It's going to be going away. But this nav loop here, one thing I wanted to show is that actually this should not be commented out because neither should this. The tracker is, I didn't talk about the tracker, but that's the thing at the bottom that tracks like where the cursor is. Oh, I did talk about that, but that's whenever I run update tracker, it's going to update the coordinates of the where your cursor is, and then update the like that max line, the first line, or the maximum line of the file that's currently being shown, like the real line number. But this main.mode, I'm setting it to mode.nav, which is the default mode when you start a VI, so that you can use your cursor keys and just move around the document. So that's what that permits. So I'm starting from the beginning in navigation mode, and so the first kind of input loop that's running is for navigation, and this is a loop. And I think in Sam's Fart Bombs game, he's got a navigation loop, but it is, or input loop, I should say, but it's using the repeat function. And I think I even asked a question because how I've been doing it, and I got this from looking at the examples early on that are in the repo, is I just have a label, and then at the bottom you'll see there's just a go-to, and so it's just kind of, I mean, it's just like a endless loop. But I would like to look at using something like repeat. But this works, so I'm not going to mess with it at the moment. But here I'm just getting the character that may have been typed in, and then this is a when block, and then so this right off the bat, if you were familiar with using VI, I don't think I'm the only person that does this, but I hit the escape key constantly. And the reason I do that is because I just want to make sure it's in navigation mode. And so when you hit the escape key, it's just going to automatically go into navigation mode. If I hit O, like the lowercase o, that drops me down a line, and then automatically I'm in insert mode, so I can like sit here and type stuff. Okay. Well, but if I don't want to, if I do that and then I want to move on to navigation, I will hit escape, and then I'm back into the navigation mode. Okay. And so I kind of wanted to give, all of this was kind of selfishly, I guess, geared towards how I use VI. So like I need to basically notice no difference between how I'm using VI here to code this, and then when I fire up the XVI, I want to be able to use the exact same muscle memory. And so all of this is implementing that. And I think that's probably close to what most people experience. But there have been some tweaks and changes. Andrew, I think, had some changes early on to my first version. And so, but I do anticipate getting feedback on how to, kind of tweak it so that it is the same experience that you would have if you were using VI out, on your regular computer. Because that's what I want to provide, not just for myself, but for others. Because I do want people to use this, and I think they won't use it if they have to like remember, oh, I'm in the X16 VI now, so I have to do something like slightly different. That I think that's going to mess a lot of people up. It would mess me up. In any case, so this $1B, that's the escape key. And then when I hit the escape key, and I'm in the navigation input loop, it's going to set the main mode to mode.nav, which is we defined up above, and it's probably the unless you're typing, of course, but a lot of people, you spend a lot of time, at least, especially like the older the document is and the more well-formed you got your stuff in it, you're going to spend most of your time navigating anyway. So this is just a cheap, easy way to unconditionally set it. Nav mode, in order to get into command mode, you're going to put in, I'm going to hit while in nav mode, I'm going to hit the colon here, and it's going to, you can see it here in the regular VI, it's jumping down to the bottom. But it does the same. It's the same sort of behavior in XVI, and that's where that's handled here. I only do it if it's in navigation mode, because you don't want to go from, I mean, if you're typing, I don't know, I don't think that there's another mode. You're not going to be going from like insert mode or replace mode to command mode. So I need to check. And this was in early on because I was running into problems when I was testing it, and I realized I was initiating command mode some cases when I didn't want to. So I need to make sure that I'm in actual nav mode here. Then I run I set the main mode, the command cursor, and then I run the cursor command prompt, which we went over. And then this will do like clearing the command line by printing that blank line. And then here I've got some parsing out of the command. So I get the command, the full command from the cursor prompt in the form of cursor.buffer here. And then here I do some trickery using some of the string functions to slice it up and get just the like specific command I want to get. And so I've only implemented two. Well, I've experimented with others, but the only ones that I have actually here is E:E and then file name. So it's only expecting like one parameter, which is going to be the file path. And then there's Q, which is just the quit. And so I haven't gotten quite into, having, multiple parameters in if you were to specify a command, but that is totally possible here. Here I'm just pulling out the first thing, which is going to be the file name. But I do have to, let's see. So splice. I'm cutting the first two characters of the command buffer off, which is going to be the :E. So I'm getting rid of that, and I'm assuming that after that I want that everything after that's going to be the file name. That's what I'm assuming. And so the strings.length is getting the length of characters that I want, and then this fn1 is a buffer that is getting whatever slice takes and puts it into the fn1. And so I'm taking basically the third character all the way to the end of whatever I've typed in to the command. And then the strings.slice function takes that and then puts it into that fn1 variable right there. And so and then I do strings.strip, which is nice because it basically gets rid of all the white space on the left and right hand side of the string. And that's just to ensure that I've got, I don't have any weird characters that might be affecting the file name that I'm going to be opening up. And then now, so I stripped out fn1. I've only supported E for edit or open. I don't know that it's a file name up here yet. I just know that I get everything after the :E or the : whatever. And then when it will detect in the command buffer that I put an E in there. And then if there's an E, then it's going to just assume that there's an fn1, and that's when it calls load file. It draws the first page, the screen of the file to the screen, and then that's when this is about the first place, the cursor.place. That's where it puts the cursor into the upper left of the document. Then it updates the tracker, and then puts we've been in command mode the whole time. It puts the program back into navigation mode, and then that'll allow you. So that gives you the effect that you might be used to, where you open up a file. And then you've got the cursor upper left, and then you can just start moving around the file. So okay, this is the navigation stuff. Let me think. Yeah, I want to go over navigation. Okay, so all of that happens if the input was : okay, if it was nav mode and your input is : rather than escape, you can do escape and then : and then it'll do the right thing. And that's in fact what I do most of the time. if you don't put in, if you're nav mode, if you don't hit an escape and you don't put it in a colon, well, the other keys that it supports are the actual, the navigation keys, which move things up, down, left, and right. And so this is supporting K, even though I'm going to, well, let me go over these. So if I'm in nav mode and I don't hit escape, I don't hit colon, I hit, the other keys are J, K, well, H, which is left, J, which is down, K is up, and then right is, or left is right. I mean, L is right. I don't have support in here for, oh wait, maybe I do. Let's try this. Oh no, this is the other, and this is the official VI. So right now I'm hitting the arrow keys, and I think that may have been something that you put in, Andrew, to the first version, supporting the arrow keys. But somebody did, or somebody asked for it, and I put it in. I don't remember, but that's what I'm supposed to be doing here, is supporting. You did?
He would have asked for it at least.
You would have. Yeah, I think
I
somebody on the
yes.
Discord did ask for it. All right, let me see if I support it real quick.
Although, as a right-handed person, I'm in favor of the JK. I mean the right side of the keyboard. So
E and then sample 6.txt. Okay, let's see if it. Yeah, okay, I do support it. So you can use the arrow keys here, or the the corresponding HJKL. Right, cool. All right, so it's pretty simple. I do a check also if it's, make sure it's in nav mode, and if it's a K or the down arrow. Wait a minute, that's the up. I even have it commented there. Okay, if it's K or the up arrow, that's going to call the cursor up on K function. I do the same thing for J, for down, left, and right. And so here's that go-to nav car loop that brings you back to the top that is waiting for more input. But when it detects, a down or, some kind of directional input, it calls, the functions are down here. I'll go back up. These are supporting functions up here at the top that I was adding just out of close by, just for convenience while I was developing. But here, well, I've got the J listed here. I want to move it, but I'm not going to right now. I will later. But I just want to make sure, K is listed the same up at the top as here. And anyway, so cursor down on J. What I'm doing here is I'm getting the current line, the current column, the next line, what the next line is supposed to be. So it's going to be like whatever line I'm on now, +1. And then I've got to do an if check. If the current line is equal to the bottom line, so like the very bottom, I know that I have to, page the document up, basically. And so what I do there is I increment the top line, and I've got a function that does that, just so that I can cleanly look at, bound it to the value of whatever the maximum number of lines is. Because I do have to check, like, I don't want to increment it, to a number that's larger than the number of lines in the document, because that's when I start getting weird characters on the screen, and it starts beeping and stuff. So anyway, so that's what that line's for. I'm just incrementing the top line. So when you first load it, the value of this cur top line here is going to be 1, just by default. If you cursor all the way down, and then you cursor down once more after you're at the bottom, and there's another line to show, then that cur top line becomes the second line. And then because the line comes up, and then the first line has to go off the screen, and then the first line at the top is line number 2. And so that cur top line actually tracks the number of the line, the real number of the line that is up at the top. And so that's what the inc top line does. Draw screen. This is a function. I'll show you above. because I need to go, that it implements a little more concisely what the load file function does. But here I just draw the screen starting with the top line, and then I do the cursor replace. So I mentioned there was a place and then a replace. Well, it's at the very bottom of the line that I have to use replace, and I'll show you why here. If I use, and then if the line is not at the bottom, if it's not the same as the bottom, then it's going to just use this place function. Okay, so if I use the place function at the bottom, and I'm sure it's because I'm doing something crazy in the place function that I shouldn't be doing. If I scroll all the way down and I'm using the same function, the same cursor placement function as I'm using here, but at this bottom line, you see that S at the bottom here, like right above the 00175, this S here appears. And where that comes from is it's the line that you're currently over. So here it's going to be a V when I move down. So it replaces it in the line above like it should. So it's got to move it up. It's redrawing the screen, and so there's actually no replacement, but it's redrawing the screen. But it prints it out here at the bottom of this corner screen, and that was annoying the dickens out of me. Okay, so it's gonna be a T or an E, an A, and so I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure there's a really dumb thing that I did that's making that happen, but I couldn't figure it out. But I did figure out that if I did that replace function up there and got it down, boiled it down to its essence, it wouldn't do that to me. So that's why I have that function there. And then this main update function, that's updating the the line number and stuff at the bottom, or the cursor position. Cursor up on K is the same thing, except I've got a decrement top line that is bounded at 1. So if I'm going up, I'm decrementing the line number, and then when I get all the way to the top, I don't want it to go less than 1, so I just bound it at 1. It draws the screen the same way, uses replace up at the top too. Like weirdly, if it must be like a 1-by-off thing, or I don't know, some kind of edge, literally an edge condition where if I'm trying to either at the top or the bottom, I'm bumping up against it. That place function, that cursor place function, is wanting to dump the value of the character that it had just saved into that bottom left, which is bizarre. Anyway, cursor left on H is a lot more straightforward. The only constraint here I have is I don't go past the left margin, and then I've got the same with L, or the arrow keys, of course, here. And so they all call main update tracker after they're done. This is the update tracker. Pretty straightforward. I just jump down to the footer line with text.plot, print the blank line and blank it out, and then here I just kind of construct the how I want it to read. And I probably should mention this. I haven't used all of these, but I found these are super useful for like doing prints with conversions and stuff like that. So I was having a bunch of, it really reduced the complexity and the messiness of the code to kind of encapsulate all this stuff. Like say B is, well, if I just did say, and this is kind of like a Perlism, if there's a say function that came in, I think after version 5.10, where it's like print exactly as a new line. And so I've gotten kind of used to that over the years. And so basically what I'm doing is just a text print and then text new line. And that gives me the behavior that I was kind of expecting. Plus it's a small function name and less typing, easier to read for me. Print, this is not prints, it's print S, and that's just a normal print. Print B is just printing a byte without the new line, or a unsigned byte. And you kind of see what I'm doing. Like I've encapsulated these functions that are provided by text, or the text IO module, down into these shorter wrapper functions. So that's just helped me keep the code a lot cleaner. So where are we going to go next? Did y'all have any questions? Because I was going to go to, I guess, the screen draw, and then, or maybe I should jump up to the top, talk about the document structure, look at loading the document, and then end with drawing on the screen. Because I could probably cover that in the next 10 minutes. I don't know how much time you're wanting to limit this to, but I think we're probably another 10 or 15 minutes out.
You're at about an hour right now, I think.
Okay.
The one question I had, and this maybe Gillum has done, or Andrew has done some testing on this, but you're using the go-to instead of the repeat. Obviously, go-to, could, has other functions besides just repeating. But in the case of using it as a repeat, I wonder if there is any difference in the resulting assembly code that's produced.
As far as I know, they both would jump, or branch back to the start.
Yeah.
Same way. I suppose the go-to would let you be kind of explicit about what you're doing in certain spots where, repeat, if you wanted to exit early and go back to the repeat, you'd do like a continue, and then it would just, start the top of the repeat again. If you say go to, nav loop, it would be more obvious, like that it's going back there, I suppose, but it generates the same code, and the repeat is, just meant to avoid having to use a go to and a label. You just, use a repeat with curly braces.
Yeah, I think I want to move to that model. And if I needed to like restart the repeat, I could always put a label above that and then go to that. But
Yeah.
I don't think I need to. But yeah, I do want to do that to clean it up. So have y'all talked at all in any of the talks? And I've seen most of them. I've been in most of them, but not all. But in the ones I haven't been in and I haven't yet watched, have y'all talked anything about structs?
No.
Y'all introduced those?
No, we haven't talked about structs or pointers or, any kind of, shall we say, advanced data structures.
Okay. So I'm not going to even attempt to try and explain it in a deep way, but I will say that with version 12.0, Prog8 supports complex data structures. And structs, if you're familiar with C, and again, me coming from the Perl world, I kind of make my living off of creating very complex data structures sometimes. So I've got, a hash with hash keys pointing to other things and other hashes, and this feature allowed me to start, I guess, opening up my thinking a little bit more, the kind that I'm able to do if I have the flexibility of Perl. But I did have to spend a long time trying to understand how structs were implemented in Prog8, not because there's anything wrong with how he did it. It was because it forced me to understand much more intimately, like how the memory layout. I kind of live in a world where I can abstract the memory layout away. I don't have to worry about it too much. I don't even code C very often. So I'm really kind of can pretend that memory is unlimited, and I don't have to worry where things are placed, which is nice. But here I had to worry about exactly where they were placed. And so I wanted to implement the document as so I've got an overall document that I've got a document that is it's like the metadata for the document. So like when I open up a file, I have already, like, for lack of a better term, because this isn't exactly what's happening, because it's not like Windows or Linux, but at the allocation of memory, I'm really just kind of reserving for myself in my own mind, or program point of view. I'm reserving a chunk of memory by allocating it, and I'm defining how each byte or each range of bytes should be treated by default by the compiler. when it's emitting the assembly and all of that, like the assumptions it's making about what data types are in these addresses. And so there's no runtime, actual runtime. The runtime, or the system that uses this information is the transpiler 64 tasks. And so when it's actually like emitting the assembly, or when, I'm sorry, when the Prog8 compiler is emitting the assembly, it is doing it with the hints and knowledge that the struct definition gives you. And like for the document, this is where I was talking about. I'm setting like the tab number. So like when I do implement tabs, I want the document to be on a certain tab. The character set, the first line, the start bank, which again I'm not using, but I mean I could really just take that out and add any. It's easy to add these fields. First line, that's the address, actual address of the first line, and then the line count. Those are both U words, so it's what 16 bytes, and then no 16 bits, right? Yeah. And then the next thing, all this whole block of data, this is the, oh wait, I've got U byte, let's see. This is the file path. This is actually, this is a way to implement a string, like reserve space for a string in the struct. So when I create a document type instance, it's going to be in an ordered way, going to be creating a U byte for tab number. Next, it's going to be a U byte for character set, U byte for start bank. Then a U word for the first line address and a U word for the line count, which I want to, you know, hopefully at some point figure out how to support large numbers. And then here that I've got U byte file path, and then the rest of that, I'm like, there's no, I think at the time there wasn't like pointers to strings, but this is a way to kind of force the reservation of like I think it's 80 characters. Yeah, 0. So data 0, 0. This is 1 byte each. So this is 80, actually 81 bytes. You got this, and it's a string. It's an 80 byte string with the null byte at the end. And so that all of that's just to define a file name. Now the next, so document, that like defines the metadata for a document. This struct is for each individual line. And I don't associate each line with the document other than the start address, but the line is it's a doubly linked list. So it's going to have the address that points to the previous line, and it's going to have the address that points to the next line. And initially, of course, it's going to be laid out like, you know, they're going to be laid out, what's the word? Next to each other. That's not the word I was looking for, but they're going, all the lines are going to be lined up next to each other. But it could be when I start implementing like delete line and insert line and all that stuff, things might start getting messy, and so I might have to start putting, you know, lines here, lines there, marking lines like, you know, bad, or do some kind of, I don't know. I've thought about different ways to approach that, and I haven't actually started. But in any case, it could get, the document itself is what I'm saying, it could get fragmented. So like it's not a good assumption to think that all the lines are just going to line up perfectly in memory all the time. So that's what the linked list is for. And what the linked list is, so the struct here is a line, and it's got 3 members. The first line is the first member is an address to the previous line, so the start address to the previous line of line, I'll say line type. And then the next one is, or the next field is the pointer to the address for the following line. And then all of that data block there is just like in the document file, that is an 80 byte string that represents the data in each line. Okay. And so that is, those are the 2 like structs that I use. And then this first line here, I'm declaring doc as a document. I just need one of those at the moment. And I'm doing that in the main namespace. So here, this is the main open brace. And so it's not being done within like a subroutine. It's being done in the the main scope of this block. And so following on there, I've got some constants like max length of a line is 80 bytes. That's bytes. Line size is going to be whatever the size of line. And this is a good point. This is why I wanted to use this explicit byte layout. And like I said, I don't know if that's been if Irwin's changed that at all, or if you still have to do this. But this explicitly, declaring like 80 actual bytes made the size of function accurate. Because if I didn't do that, what I was having to do was take size of line, which was going to be, you can put a string type in there, but it's going to give you, I think, the size like a U word. So it's going to be like the initial address of the string. But then I would have to add like 80 bytes to that value. I wanted to be able to do size of line and it be accurate. And so that was the solution that the smart guys on the Discord came up with, and I mean that seriously. Like, I never would have even considered doing this. So, and in fact, Mark Lestrange, I need to give him a lot of credit. He basically, I had like some implementation, I was having some weird problems, and he basically just said here. And so he wrote pretty much all of this first part, got all the different inconsistencies straight with my data types, and really helped me out and taught me a lot in the process. So the big one was, it's a combination of creating the structs, but also how do you manage like allocating a line and a document, all this stuff. And so the problem I was having was, if I wanted to load a file, I figured out, like in the first version of XVI, how to iterate over a file by line. But how am I supposed to now, in a not really in an efficient way, but in a readable way, in a sane way, allocate a line, set the pointers to the previous and the next, and then fill in the data. And then so he's the one that really helped me out with this allocation line. And so one thing, I'm not going to really go over this allocation alloc line, other than to say it reads in the let's see, what is the initial? Well, anyway, it is what builds up the double linked list that is the actual text of the data of the document. And I'll show you when I use it in the draw screen, where I get the initial value of the start line, and then I iterate over each line to print by asking, okay, what's the next address? So rather than just incrementing the next address to like, and I could do this initially, get the next address by just adding, was it size of line to whatever the previous address is. I'm using the actual field so that it can support a document that might be stored like broken up in different places. But one important aspect I mentioned, this buffer, this memory function here will allocate. I say allocate. It gives you the start address of a chunk of memory. Okay, and so you can name it internally. I think the Prog8 compiler uses this to do some internal tracking, and it tries to get everything like lined up and adjacent in the right ways. But basically, it just returns buffer, or it returns the address of where your allocated block starts, and this buffer size is what determines the size. Now, I calculate buffer size above its max lines, and 375. I actually had to reduce this. I had 500, And then I started getting some compiler errors saying that my program was running into like the IO range of the X16 memory and stuff. And I tried messing around with you could set, I forget what the name, there's like memtop or something like that. You could set it, and I was trying to play those games until I realized the reason it was running over is because I was just pre-allocating too much space for these lines. And so I can't even fill up 375. That's what I was mentioning in the beginning, is I was able to get 175 reliably. I was trying to narrow down, like, okay, when does it actually stop working? But I think it's going to be under 375, and I need to figure out why. But in any case, I'm allocating 375 lines times line size, which is whatever we talked about. The line struct above is multiple fields plus the 81 byte block. That's the 80 byte string plus the null character. And so this is actually computing a block of memory that's large enough to hold 375 line types theoretically. And so I use this throughout. And if I just do like here, I'm assigning the line, which is a next pointer. I think that's the pointer, right? There's two carets. That's going to be a pointer to a line type. And so that basically I'm just saying the pointer to the initial next field is going to be the start of the buffer. And then head, I don't know if I use header. Do I use header tail? Oh no, this is Mark's thing. Yeah, he uses header tail. Okay. And so basically we're like doing this kind of block allocation. And then whenever we read a file in, we're sending it in the value, and it's going to be incrementing next here, and it keeps track. So the next is outside of alloc line. Every time we read a line and we save it, we allocate a line, we're actually just saying, okay, what is the next address in this chunk of memory that we allocated, and we're going to put that data in the data that 81 byte string spot, and then the set the next and the previous and the next pointers. So
the double caret and the line, the line is actually your structure.
Right.
So that's instantiating an instance of the structure.
Okay.
So you're creating an instance of the line structure called next and head and tail.
Right.
And that connect. It's a pointer reference when it's a different type.
And then my understanding with the implementation of the struct stuff is it's really just internally keeping track of like a type, like a named type. And so if you were to do things with it, like say for example, you were to call a field, it already knows internally what actual type that is, what primitive type that's supposed to be, or what, I guess maybe the size, like ubyte, uword, that sort of thing. There's some lookup stuff happening, like in the compiler when you set this up, but it's not like, it's not like an object system where you're doing, it's tracking, it's doing what you would expect, but it is kind of, I've been able to suspend belief or reality for a little bit enough to treat this as if it is like an object system, but I butt up against that assumption pretty quickly. In any case,
it's a data structure, and it's tracking like the offset of each field inside the structure for you. And
yes.
So that's allowing you to do where you have that populate field there in the middle. You're saying like this dot previous equals and this dot next. Well, that's a namespace, but it's knowing that like, previous is, the first offset 0, and next is 2 bytes past that or whatever.
Right.
It's tracking that all for you. And so that's one of the benefits. And then it knows about the size of that object. So if you want to copy it or do a size of, and then if you're using a variable where you want to increment it, and it's of a type of a structure, you can add one to it, and it actually increments it by the size of the structure, not just a single digit one, but actually, like if your structure there is 89 bytes, when you do this, pointer plus one, it actually adds 89 to that U word. And so it does a lot of, heavy lifting, shall we say, of kind of keeping track of the data structure for you.
Well, it came at a perfect time because that's exactly when my code was getting very hard to manage. With my first attempt with version 2 is that was a big part of my procrastination, was like, man, this is, now I got to track, the previous field and the next field and like doing all the calculations, and I had it working, but like it was a mess. It was like I got the basic stuff working here, but then I'm supposed to do all this other stuff with it. And you know how code gets very complicated. If it's already complicated, like you're doing simple stuff, it's gonna become impossible to use as a basis if you're doing complicated stuff. So this came at a perfect time, the struct support.
So just for those of us that don't know struct or whatever, this new feature, maybe haven't used it exactly the same way in another language. I guess it's kind of like saying it's just the data portion of an object. So it obviously it doesn't include methods or anything like that. It's just the data portion.
Yeah, exactly. And like for me, I was able to think. It allowed me to think about it. In a very structured way, not quite like an object, but because it just gave you the fields, the data.
Yeah.
But not yet. It's not attaching like functions to it, methods and stuff like that. But it does benefit your thought process by even just having
the record or the individual record of data, but it's not the access methods.
Right.
But it helps you, like people were doing some sophisticated, sort of method-based things before, and like I think Mark has a Perl script or Raku, whatever script that generates kind of like some of that stuff he was using, and it calculates all your offsets and lets you access things. This was before the structs came about. Well, having the structs lets you implement some of that fancier things, and the compiler keeps track of the various offsets for you and all those details. So it's definitely having that complex data structure kind of foundational in the compiler, then everybody uses it, it's the same implementation of it, gets a lot more exercise and bugs found and features added and everything, instead of each person sort of doing it themselves.
And that's kind of what I was trying to say, is you nailed it. It gives you data structures. It gives you a straightforward way of doing data structures. Like the linked list. I mean, like I said, it's a pain. And of course, I'm coming from an area of ignorance for this kind of programming, but it was a pain in the butt. And then if you were to implement like a database, something that had like actual record, because this is effectively a database of lines. You could probably I would absolutely like use Prog8 for anything that required anything that smelled of needing a data structure. So. So it's super, super great. And like the guys on Discord were super helpful. And I actually even understood, especially after going through this, I understood a lot more than I did before. I got a lot more appreciation about the actual memory layout, and that's helped me out a lot just in general. Even like my day-to-day stuff. I actually, with Perl, like I have looked at the internal data structures of Perl before, and I've done stuff with them and written XS, but I didn't really know what I was doing. It really didn't sink in to the degree that it probably should have. But when you get this close to the memory address and layout, you can't avoid but things kind of coming together for you, at least for me. So it's super helpful, not just with the 8-bit programming, but just my day job. It was good.
Okay.
What else do you got to do? I think we're at probably about an hour and a half now.
Okay, well, this is the, yeah, I could just do the draw screen routine. Now this, I need to, this basically takes the, well, it starts at the top and then it draws, it just places the cursor up at the top. It gets the value for the line, or it gets the initial address is just the address of the buffer here. So that start address of the line number 1. And then here it's just iterating. I'm using repeat here. It's just getting the, you know, the address. So I set address to be buffer. First iteration, it's the first line, and I get line.text. Say that is just printing it with a new line. And then all I do, this is where the linked list comes into play. I just get the next address, and then it repeats, and then get the text, print it, next, all the way down to the bottom. And so that is the benefit of doing the data structure, is drawing it is that simple. Loading it is similarly simple. Don't let a lot of this stuff, most of this is just like printing out like loading and doing some error checking. But basically here, this while loop, I open up the file path and I'm going to read until the end of the file. And I just get the, here, this read line, I just put it into length, which is actually length is the actual length in bytes. Line buffer is where the line, so Prog8 has really good disk IO support. This reads the line up until like a new line character or a null byte or something. And so it's easy to read a text file, just the whole line at a time. And then here I use the R strip, which it strips any spaces on the right-hand side. So like if I get a line that's like shorter than 80 bytes, I don't want to be storing that blank space or wrangling with it. So I just strip it. And the reason I did that is actually in saving the file. If I don't do that, I was like saving lines, but then saving the white space. And so I was basically just trying to have the length somewhat variable. But that's what that R strip does. It just strips off any extra space. And then that's some, let's see, what else do I do? Okay, this is here is where I do the alloc line. I send it the line buffer, which is the data that I just read. And then in return, I get the line address. And then internally, because, you know, just by the way that we set, Market set things up, you don't have to worry about tracking the next, the previous, and next, because all of that's accounted for in the alloc line. And then here I just increment line count, close the file handle, and then clear the screen. And then the intent there is that's when that initial draw screen is called. Let's see, it's right there. Oh, I should have. I do want to support line numbers in my XVI. I did have that in the initial attempts, but I took that out for now. So I wanted to get down to where I actually call draw initial screen. So if I'm loading, okay. So if I load a file, assume that FN1 is a file name, it does what I just talked about, loads into memory but doesn't draw it. This draw initial screen, really I just need to make the call to draw a screen and add the line number to, you know, the start to be the first line in a document. But that's what it does. It just draws the first 56 lines on the screen, does the cursor placement stuff. Now for paging down here, and we can finish up here, this is a generalization of that draw initial screen where I send it in the starting line. And what I wanted to show is this. I need to create an index or something where I can map the actual line of the document to the start address, so I don't have to do stuff like this. Because what this is doing here, and this is a hack, and I don't want to keep it, is basically I take the starting line, and in order to find the address of it, I just repeat that many lines and getting, going from line to line saying, what's your next line until I get to the line I want to start at. And then that's when I start drawing stuff to the screen. And I know that is not good or efficient, but it'll help me avoid creating some kind of figure out an index lookup for addresses. So yeah, that's kind of my next challenge. I just want to figure out the best way to do it, but that may be some trial and error. And next step after this, so I've got navigation. I'll bring this up one more time. I've got navigation. I can open up a file. My next step is going to be, okay, well, so my next step is to, now that I got pagination down, I will probably implement like jumping to the first line and jumping to the very last line. And then I want to start implementing like delete a line, and then the yank, the copy, and then the paste. And then I need to, as far as editing goes, the easiest edit mode is going to be to replace, because that you can just like put it in edit mode, put it on a line, and then just start typing. Like you're just literally replacing what's there. The more difficult one is going to be insert. And the thing I don't know, I know that I can jump to a line. I know that I can refer to each character as an index in the string, and I can shift things over like as needed. But what I don't know exactly what to do at the moment is if a line, like these are all long lines, if I start inserting in the middle of this long line, what do I do if I'm just gonna, if I say, or it only supports 80 characters, do I just like delete, or do I just like forget if I'm inserting and the characters are shifting over to the right, do I just do they lose those characters or what? So I need to figure out like what is a good compromise, what's a good user-friendly kind of thing to do there. And it may be that I just have to support long lines. So I don't know if y'all had any thoughts or what, but that's kind of next step, is just implement some of the delete, copy, paste stuff, and then start getting into where I can actually type. Because my first goal is I want to be able to type in some of the type X16 typing programs that are in the Compute Gazette. Okay, I want to be able to do that using my editor on the X16. And then the longer term, more midterm, is I would actually like to be able to use this editor, or the editor through the emulator like you see it now, but to edit the Prog8 files that run the editor. So I want to be able to, through the emulator, have a self-editing editor.